All right, so marhaba everybody. My name is Audrey and I'm here to present my Arabic project. It was an Arabic comic class where I learned how to read, write, speak, and learned about the culture of the Arabic language. So for the past semester, like I said, I've been creating this comic and learning how to create comics, how to draw in certain comic styles, and how to map them out. And I've never taken a language class that involved art in comics, especially one with like a whole new language. So it was really interesting. And it wanted me to keep going back and learning the language, regardless of how hard it got, which it got extremely hard. I learned a lot about myself as a learner and how I perceive things and a lot about comics themselves. So the standards I learned this past semester were a lot of foreign language credits, visual storytelling, exploring culture and beliefs, ownership and learning, refinement and script making, all of which I got proficient progress. I learned, like I said, I learned a lot about how comics are created and how much time and effort people have to be putting into these comics. I'm an artist myself and I don't do comics. I typically do one art piece with line art, sketch, and coloring, but having to sit down and do the same thing over and over and over really tested my stamina and strengths as an artist. And it was a really big struggle for me because typically I like the whole process of art, but not having to do that whole process, it's like, it was just super repetitive, but it made me think about all of the comic artists that are doing this as a job and how it's not just all black and white, like black and white of what I thought it was. So I created a whole script for this project and whole transliteration, which is basically how Arabic sounds in the English alphabet. And then I had to transfer that over into actual Arabic script. So I did about a 5-page comic with about 30 panels, and I'll explain about what this comic is about. So we have the main character of the comic. Her name is Millie Baker, and she lives in Asheville, North Carolina, and she's a barista, so that's what she looks like. She's really cute. This is called a character reference sheet. I'm really proud of this. I think it looks great. I especially like her little hands. And onto the comic. This is just the comic. A couple comes in, they order coffee, they're talking, they're greeting each other. They ordered their coffee and some things get a little bit funny. He asks for a treat from the actual coffee shop thing, and they pay, they order, and they're like, wow, this is awesome coffee and tea. It was really hard to figure out what I was gonna do for this comic because I only had so many words that I actually knew in Arabic from that whole semester. So coming up with a funny, interesting, and just generally fun comic was like really hard, but I think I managed that well. Another thing I also really struggled with was time management. I've always been a really big procrastinator when it comes to things like art and just school in general. So I struggled a lot with trying to come up with the time and effort and stamina to create this, but I think that towards the end, I kind of just pushed through. I finished it on time, I turned it in on time, and I'm quite happy with how everything came out. I wish I would have added more panel-to-panel transitions, and if you don't know what that means, it's basically how the story flows together. I obviously could have done a lot better with the coloring and the liner and cleaned it up and refined it. And I'm hoping to do that in the future with more of my comics because I have found that I actually do like creating comics. And I'm really excited to continue on with that newfound passion and work on my art as a person and continue to grow with my creations. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Audrey. I really like I really like being able to, the way I could like see your process and see, get the image of it in color and then see how that translated into the black and white, as well as the consistency that, that I don't even know if I was drawing it, if I could make the characters recognizable from cell to cell. So that you were able to do that is pretty cool. I like that you talked about your process and the challenges that you came up against throughout the process. And I wonder are you planning on like leaving this comic? Are you wanting to develop it a little bit more? Kind of what's next with this line of work for you? Because I know you said you want to continue on with drawing comics a little bit.
I think what I meant by that is just comics as a whole. I have a bunch of characters that I've created over these past few years that I have a lot of ideas for writing wise. And so I feel like having a mix of my art and writing passions, I can create those two together with my, like I said, new profound information with comics. And these characters as well, this one especially, I really like how I designed her and everything. I'm going to continue drawing her and using her for just different various art pieces because she's just really cute and I really like how she turned out, like I said. So.
Right. Does anybody else have any questions or feedback for Audrey?
So I agree with what Chris said, and I've seen your art before. I always love it. I like your posts on Instagram and whatnot, and I love your honesty of the things you would have done differently, the things you liked, and the process, stuff like that. And I think you have a really good result. Good job.
I feel like as artists, we always have to continue pushing forward and being really critical with ourselves. And that honesty really made me realize how much, like how important honesty can be when it comes to art and anything, because that's just going to continue pushing yourself forward. So thank you for that.
Yeah, totally. I'm glad I was here to see that.
I'm sorry, you can continue.
Oh, I just said I was glad to be here to see that.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Audrey, first of all, they're amazing. Oh my gosh. It looks so good. You are so talented, and I'm really glad that you took the challenge of Arabic and that I think the one thing is you really put what you're talented in, into the seminar, which was awesome. But then also, I'm sure it was a challenge to figure out, hey, I know these limited words and in the language, so how am I going to fit it together? But you did an amazing job.
Thank you so much. It means a lot.
And I also think she's really cute too.
All right. Anything else for Audrey?
This is a digital artist to digital artist question, but how did you manage layers?
Layers? Oh my gosh, I hate layers. Typically what I do is I do the sketching all in one huge layer and then I go through and I just continue adding more layers as I go on. So like example, like the whole panel thing with like the outlining for like the actual structure of the panel, I did that all in one layer, and then I did all the words and the air bubbles or whatever they're called in another, and I did all the characters in another separate layer. I kind of got lazy towards the end and started doing everything on the same layer, but I guess just map everything out so you know where it is, and naming your layers is also really important so you know what's what, because drawing on the sketch layer thinking you're just drawing on the wrong layers, it sucks. I don't know if you've ever like done that before where you're like coloring over your liner and then you realize halfway through.
I think I've done that before, but I usually lower the opacity of my layer before I start drawing.
Yeah, I do that too, but I don't know. Layers are complicated, but just mapping them out is like the best thing you can do.
Yep.
All right. Thanks a lot, Audrey.